All right. Welcome back to Chicken Ranch Records, the podcast. You're listening to Season 1, Episode 8. Today on the program, our guest is Chet Weise. Chet is a musician, writer, and poet. He performs with the Nashville power trio Kings of the Fucking Sea. They have a new live album out. Definitely check it out if you can. It's fantastic. And we talked to Chet a few weeks ago. I apologize for the delay in this episode, but it's been a crazy summer. It's great to hear from Chet, though. Really one of our favorite people. We put his split single with a band from Europe called the Matching Numbers out. And this is his old band, the Lee County Killers, who were based in Alabama. It was a two-piece band, Chet and Doug Sherrard. Just a great tune. The record's actually way out of print with Chicken Ranch. We do have some links to Chet's band, Kings of the Fucking Sea, on our show notes, and also links to Third Man Books. I hope you enjoyed the interview. We had a great chat about just a lot of stuff, a lot of COVID-y music kind of stuff, and how great it is to be playing music again. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
I just got a text while we were talking from one of my friends that supposedly Ozzy just bought a house in his neighborhood.
Are you still in your place over in East Nashville? Same place?
Hold the presses. What's that?
Are you in the same places or the same place in Nashville that you lived previously?
No, my wife and I, we just moved out to that.
Cool. Yeah, I remember you had that house is near Price's house, I think, over near the high school, right, over in East Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great place.
Yeah, Doug moved way outside of town. I haven't been to his new place since he kind of dropped off the radar. I think he wanted to drop off the radar.
Yeah, I've been to Nashville in a while just because of COVID, but I need to send him a message via Facebook and see how he's doing.
I've been locked down pretty hardcore for this year. I've got definitely one of those asthma kids. I haven't really been to Nashville either, man. I've been in my backyard. It's just now that after I got the first shot, I started kind of coming out into the world again.
Same here. I would go to the grocery store and then to do my physical rehab classes and stuff just for my knee. Is everything that's going well in Madison? Everybody's kind of moving. It's like Austin. Everybody's moving kind of out in the outskirts of the city, it seems like.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. It's not a mass exodus, but there's certainly a community of us that have moved out here from East Nashville. I mean, certainly Madison's always had its own thing happening. I'm saving a few $1,000s on property tax alone just moving. I timed it. I'm 8 minutes from my old house, and it's saving me thousands of dollars in property tax.
You can't beat that. That's fantastic. And you got a new record out, too. The Kings of the Fucking Sea has a new record, or your debut record, actually. Yeah, it was a debut album?
Yeah, it's debut. It was just kind of an interesting thing that, I don't know, it was sort of mixed up in all this COVID madness.
I heard the record's great. I like the songs on it, and we'll do a playlist for Chicken Ranch and stuff.
We were, because it has, what doesn't have to do with COVID? Basically took over, 15, 16 months of our lives. Right before COVID hit, we recorded a couple of shows in Nashville at a place called Soft Shops on a reel-to-reel. So very much DIY kind of thing. One of those old Tascam half-inch reel-to-reels, and we set microphones, and it was basically like having a house party. We did it for 2 nights in a row, and the plan was that we were going to mix down some of the songs and do a single or a 10-inch and go on tour over in Europe. We had a couple of festivals lined up and going to do a tour, and we were going to go no matter what, because going over a trip over there and playing rock and roll is always fun, but it makes more sense if you have a record, of course. So Agitated Records was going to do a 10-inch for the tour. After we recorded the 2 nights of Soft Show, was great. It was, story-worthy and had a good time. And then a few weeks later, 6 tornadoes barreled through Nashville, fucked everything up. And then a couple of weeks after that, COVID hit. And we all know what happened then. Everything, shut down and all of that. And we just, how it was those first couple of weeks of COVID. It was kind of like a movie where you just try to figure out what's going on. And then more news is coming and more things are shutting down. And that's how it was with tours. At first, it was like, well, in a couple of weeks we'll be okay. We'll go over. But then a couple of months we'll be all right. And then everything got canceled, and I just sort of thought that was the end of it. But agitated, decided to go ahead and put out a whole full length instead. I mean, it makes sense that you're not going to be able to play, can't do the tour, can't really do any live shows for a while, so let's put out a live record. So that's what we did, and that's why the debut record is a live record. And not only am I really happy that this band has a record out, but good God, it was something good that was happening during all this darkness. You know, it was something for us to lean into and work on. And, you know, rock and roll serves many purposes in all of our lives. Kings of the fucking Sea certainly helped us. Agitated Records helped us it gave us something cool to think about during all this darkness.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a good thing to do. I'm glad that it all worked out for you. Do you still have the same setup you had with the Lee County Killers? I mean, you had that great custom-made guitar and the amps, and it's just like visually it was really awesome look. You had the real kind of custom amps and guitar. Look at somebody threw a Hex on a Gibson SG.
Yeah. Okay, so, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day about Killers and teams, and for me, it's a great dynamic between the two groups. I mean, rewinding a little bit more, Killers' last show was in Canada, and at that time, we were drum, guitar, and organ. Our last record was a trio. The two records before that, the Ettes records, we were a duo, and that last show, we didn't really plan for it to be the last show, but we were just comparing notes. I remember vividly, I walked up on John Wesley Myers, who's now James Legg. That's what he goes by in his music career. And J.R. Collins, they were sitting at the bar. It was like 5 minutes before the show. It wasn't a huge bar, but it was a rock bar. It was almost sold out. I couldn't find them. I found about 5 minutes before we were supposed to play, and they were huddled up, and they had these pens out and a bunch of notes and papers. And I looked, and there's a bunch of figures written on the paper, and I was like, "What are you guys doing? We're about ready to play." And they just turns out they were trying to figure out what to do about their bills and life, and things had gotten pretty hard with the band at that time, and it wasn't as fun as it had been. And we just huddled up before the show, and we decided this is going to be our last show. We went up, got drunk as skunks, played, told everybody it was our last show. And then a couple of years later, I ran into John, and we were talking about that show. And I was like, I don't even remember what we did after that. I don't remember getting on the plane and coming home or anything like that. And he just looked at me and said, "Chet, we didn't fly home. We just got in the van and drove straight back to Alabama." I don't remember that drive at all. I think my subconscious just blocked it out. So I didn't play guitar for a couple of years after that. I just stopped playing guitar at all, completely. And then started getting back a little bit, playing a couple of cool duos with people like Craig Pickering from the Dex Team, otherwise known as Sweet Dog, and Poni Silver, Kings of the Fucking Sea. Started off as a duo with Poni on drums, who I'm now her husband. But none of those really caught. Now, I've taken such a long journey from when you asked me this question, Michael.
That's okay.
But now we added Sarah Nelson, who plays bass. She was in a band called the Little Killers. You probably remember them. They put out records with Chris.
Yeah.
And we're a rock power trio, and I fucking love it. It's reignited I can't even remember when the Killers broke up. This is the first full length I've done since then. First band I've been in where we have regular practices and talk about tours and shows. And it's a psychedelic, heavy, 3-piece power trio, bass, drums, and guitar. I play a Marshall head, no crazy tunings like I did in the Killers. In the Killers, I had 2 amps and would use a channel switcher between left amp, right amp, or both. One amp was like a guitar amp. One amp was a bass. So I was always trying to do the dynamics in a different way, but the dynamics of a rock band in a blues context. And you listen to our records, and you'll hear those old records, and you'll hear the bass kick on and off, and strobing between the two amps. And they used homemade guitars that I had a luthier in Auburn, Lee County, Alabama, make for me. His name was Curtis Franklin. He has vanished. I don't know where Curtis Franklin ended up, but designed these big hollow body guitars, fire shaped, like you said, roughly. I sketched them out on a napkin and told him what kind of hardware I liked. And he made these two beautiful pieces of art. I still have them. I treat them more as art now than guitars. They got beat up so bad, and they've been around for so long. I asked too much of them back in the day, but they were designed to give me a really wide range of sound. You know, they were almost baritone guitars. They were hollow body too, so with the amp off, they almost sounded like an acoustic. Turn the amp on, and they howled like banshees.
Yeah, it's a great sound.
Yeah, that's what the Killers were all about. You know, the Killers were made the old instruments. Elliot, lead singer from the Dex Teens, was a cabinet maker. He made my guitar cabinet. You know, the whole idea of that band was see how much sound two people could. We were a maximalist band and a minimalism lineup, and that's what I was trying to do. And Kings of the Fucking Sea, we're a trio, so I don't have to make up for all that sonic real estate. I'm just a guitar player now, and I fucking love that, man. I haven't played with the bass for 20 years regularly, so it's amazing playing with the bass player. For me, this is all new stuff again. So, you know, we're playing rock, psychedelia, a little heavier stuff, and that means Marshall, man. So what I do a little bit different is with this band is I run the Marshall through two Fender twin cabs, so it doesn't sound like your normal Marshall setup. Three of us, they make quite a bit of noise. Like I said, it's kind of reignited my love for being in a band again. So I don't know. That might be the whole podcast right there. That's the story.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell your guitar sound. You have a real distinctive guitar tone. You know, I'm not a guitar nerd, but I can tell it's, you know, you playing the guitar because it's got that, you know, kind of sound. It kind of has evolved from Lee County Killers, your previous projects. And was it Sex Panther was the one that was you and Sweet Dog? Is that right?
For all too short time, we played in a group called the Silver Line 2020.
That's right. That's what it was. Okay. Yeah. It was Sex Panther for a little bit, then it changed or something, or
yeah. We did a 10-inch. We did a 10-inch split with a great Nashville rap rock band called Hans Condor.
Cool.
And that came out on Classic Bar Music, a really good label out of California. Tim Kerr did the artwork for that one. That group kind of eventually evolved into, I think at one time, our last show, we had two guitars, bass, and drums, so it was a full band. Matt Patton from the Dex Teens and now the Drive-By Truckers was on bass. Ronnie Lee Gibson was the other guitar player. I think our last show was actually at the Foo Bar. No, our second to last show was the Foo Bar in Nashville. And we got in a fight with a bunch of skinheads. It was really crazy. I got knocked out. I was blacked out at the time, so I don't remember getting punched or getting knocked out. Everyone said my eyes rolled up in the back of my head, and I fell backwards and hit my head on the asphalt out in front of the club. So I was told that the fight started off in the inside of the bar, kind of Wild West style. Everybody just started fighting and then spilled out into the parking lot. You know how they do in the movies. And then my ass got fucking laid out.
That's something else. I didn't realize that all happened. I remember when y'all first played, you played Austin with you and Doug played as Lee County Killers, and then you and Sweet Dog did the next night for the Creep Out thing we did back in 2009.
Oh, that's right.
8 or 9. Yeah, I think it was 8. Oh, wait, I think. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's right. That was a really fun weekend.
That was, yeah. That was why I laughed my ass off all weekend, too. That was really fun hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, I feel like kind of started a theme to this podcast about kind of connecting the dots between the Killers and now. You know, we started off being Sweet Dogs, and it evolved into a full band, and then everybody kind of moved in their own directions, including me, and that band never really broke up. It just kind of dissolved. And then after that, I was in a band called the Ultras SC for a little while with Ben Swank and the Soledad Brothers and Jamina Pearl from Be Your Own Pet. That was a fantastic band. We did a couple of singles. One came out on Cast Records. I can't remember what the other one is.
Got the first single. It's at the white cover with the kind of swirly art and stuff. Is it the one?
Yeah. And then Jamina and Swank, they were married, or they are married, and they have two beautiful kids now. I remember when we were on tour, we did a little tour, 2-week tour, Ultras SC. We played some shows with Man or Astroman. I remember that we were talking about touring, and they were like, let's do some touring, put some records out, and then we'll have some kids. Well, the kids came first. The band kept on playing, and they're in a great band now too. Some other folks in town, but once again, that group just kind of dissolved. Just life, you know.
And life does that to music sometimes too. It just kind of changes things, and then the good thing about it, you can always pick it back up down the road. That's the nice thing about it.
Yeah. So I guess that's what, like, after the Killers broke up, I took a break for a couple of years. Then after that, I was playing here and there with great people and good groups and putting out some records. Those records are out there forever, but the bands just kind of seem to kind of come and go with the wind. But this trio has been solid, and for all intents and purposes, the first time that I felt like I was in a band since the Killers broke up. I also think it's because all three of us are in the same town, and we're all adult as fuck now. There's no, like, back to the Killers, that's all I did was play in the band. That's not how it is anymore. So
you're a busy guy,
proximity and being on a scheduled practice, that's a trick to do now as an adult.
It certainly is. And you've never not been busy though. Every time, even when you aren't playing in bands, you're doing something. I mean, you've got an impressive amount of academia under your belt too. Do you have a master's in, is it international business, international affairs? Is that right? Or is it something right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just figured we'd talk Chet and rock in this podcast, but let's go other. I'm always happy to talk about myself in all aspects. I have a master's in econ, economics. I taught economics for a while. I also got a master's fine art, MFA, in poetry. So I do a lot of writing, published quite a few of my poems around different magazines. Working on a short story now, science fiction short story. Teacher for a while. I taught economics. I also taught English. Taught English at MTSU in Murfreesboro, right outside of Nashville. Currently, my job is that I'm an editor. I publish books for Third Man Books. We do everything from rock books to poetry to science fiction, art books, children's books. So, yeah, I've certainly stayed busy during the years. Sometimes I wish I had focused on one thing and stayed with that, but that's the way it went. So be it.
Well, it's very tough to do that. I mean, it is nice to have something that, I've been trying to mentor people when you're just kind of done with music for a bit, have something to artistically or work-wise to fill the time. When you're in kind of an artistic lull, it's tough to crank out music when you're not feeling it.
Yeah, I think that's part of my story. I get really restless. I'm in a poetry frame of mind for too long, then I kind of get burned out on it. That's why I start getting into science fiction or playing guitar again. Although guitar is, like I said, I went cold turkey for a while, but last few years, that's probably been the most constant thing I've been doing, other than my job. I do the job is 9 to 5, but even in my job, I'm working with writers and poets and planning events, and there's certainly an amount of creativity that's going on that too. And frankly, a lot of times I just sit around and need to listen to a record and watch TV and get high too.
Nothing wrong with that.
Certainly an essential part of my lifestyle.
I understand. How did you get into with? I know you knew Ben Swank and Jack. How did Third Man Books come around? Is that your baby, or did Jack come to you with the idea?
I knew Ben Swank back in the day for sure. Soledad Brothers and Immortal County Killers, both on Ettes, and played shows together, and always thought Swank was righteous. I can't remember if we shared bills with the White Stripes, but we certainly were playing in the same places and aware and knew of each other. So we all kind of ended up crash landing in Nashville. I was already here, and I heard those guys had moved in town to start Third Band Records. So I hooked up with them and saw them around, just saying hello. And I finished my MFA up here, actually a place called Murray State, which is a little bit about an hour and a half north of here. But I was living in Nashville. I wasn't connecting with any writers here in town, and that's where my head was. I wanted to get into a community with writers, just like I had been with music, and feel that energy. It helps your art. You know, there's nothing better to be a better musician or a better poet or a better writer than to hang out with other people doing the same thing. It's better than school. School's great, but hanging out with people and doing it is the best thing. And that wasn't happening for me writing-wise in Nashville. I didn't know anybody. So going back to my house party days, rock and roll, which is the same way that Quadrajets and Immortal County Killers started, is I decided to do a reading. I had a vocal PA and talked to a bartender friend of mine at a really small dive bar here called Dino's. It's still around, but it's very different now than what it was. Dino's was basically just one room. And it was a dive bar in the truest sense of the word. Like, you would see regular customers would actually be rats running around in there. It was a great place. We loved it. And I asked, it was the kind of place where you could just go up to the bartender and say, hey, can I do a poetry reading here next Friday night? And they would say yes. It's like where all the punk bands would do their first shows and that kind of place. So I set up a vocal PA, invited some people to come read poetry, had people come play music also. I remember Jake out of New York, from great poet from Alabama. He's now passed on, unfortunately. He was the first headline reader we had. And I named it Poetry Suck, and totally thought that no one would be interested except for a few people into poetry that would come out of the woodwork. It ended up being something that people really loved. It ended up being written about in paper, and a regular thing that had a line out the door. The guys from Third Band were coming to it and participating in it. After about a year or two of this, I decided that I had worked with enough good writers to do an anthology. And going to put together an anthology of writers who had appeared at Poetry Sucks and musicians who had played it. Approached Swank about it, not for a Third Band project, but as a friend and friend project. That's like, because Swank's into writing also. And we were going to be co-editors. We talked about it, and one day he said, hey, me and Jack have been thinking about doing a press for a while, part of Third Band, doing Third Band books. And the anthology you're talking about, we were calling it language lessons. This anthology that we're talking about, would you be interested in doing it on Third Band? And it was so funny because Swank was acting. I don't know. He's like, "Do you think you want to do it on Third Band? Do you think that's something you want to do, or do you just? I mean, I don't want to do this. That kind of thing." I was like, Swank, are you fucking kidding? I wouldn't have to put this on my credit card. I wouldn't have boxes stacked in my living room. I'd love to do it on Third Band. So we ended up doing we published the anthology. It did well. And then from that, they hired me full time to be editor of Third Band books. So that first anthology, Language Lessons, was that was something that we did to do it because it was going to be cool, and it grew into the Third Man Books press permanently. But that anthology has got great writers like Stevie Wright, Adrian Matika, the Pulitzer finalist. Richard Hell has a piece in there. Tab Falco has a piece in there. Tim Kerr has poems. Lots of great contemporary writing, and had a double album too that had people like Paul Wine Jones and Carlton Melton, who's some of the dudes from Zing Gorilla Destruction Unit. So I'm pretty proud of that anthology, and that's how this stage of my life. That's how I ended up with the 9-to-5 job, Michael.
Nothing wrong with that at all. They, I remember that came out. I think Doug is on there. Doug and Stephanie are on there for the Mystery Twins on the record, or
yes, the Mystery Twins are on there. Great song, Going Down to the River. Doug Lehman is. We ended up becoming very good friends and collaborators, partners in crime and a lot of things. He's basically, I think we even list him as the fourth member of Kings of the Fucking Sea. He doesn't play an instrument in a trio, but we have a very heavy psychedelic visual show when we play live, and that's what Doug does. You know, he works as a video editor here and shoots music videos, and this gives him a chance to do something live. And he has this amazing mad scientist setup that he does, different projectors and computer and doing different. Let's just say that I think that we have a visual display that could rival Manor Astroman in the tech category now.
That's pretty good. I always loved their shows too. Doug was, for everybody who's listening, Doug Lehman was a singer and guitar player for the Clutters, and then played in Mystery Twins and does the visual effects for Kings of the Fucking Sea. And yeah, I could imagine how great he is at that too. I had a friend who played with, do you remember Bill Doss played in Olivia Tremor Control? He's one of my guys I knew from college, and he had a friend who ran a back PA, would run the loops from the show and then re-loop the audio for the back of the room where it came out really weird. It was kind of a cool thing, and he was a great guitar player also, and it was kind of crazy. He was doing like this kind of enhancing thing for the live show. It was pretty cool. And so Doug is doing, I guess, down for that, which is great.
Yeah, Doug. When I moved to Nashville, the Clutters were the shit. They loved that band. Whenever they played, I would go see them, and I didn't know Doug at all. I hardly knew anybody in Nashville when I moved up here. I knew Doug Sherrard, the boss from Immortal Lee County Killers, and he's basically the person who turned me on to Nashville. Told me to check out moving up here from Auburn.
Oh, Doug's the best.
Other than Doug Sherrard, I didn't know anybody up here. That's not my best friend from high school is a lawyer up here. So I knew the two of them, Chip Wilkins.
I think I knew you were there. I remember seeing you there in Nashville, and then I think I saw one of the last Lee County Killers shows with you and James Legg and JR at the Radio Cafe, I believe.
Yeah, Radio Cafe. That was a nexus point in Nashville. I think that's probably where I made my friend group here in Nashville.
Yeah, same here actually, because I was like right before. I think when I left, I think you got to Nashville, and Radio Cafe was still going with Dave. Dave was still managing Radio Cafe. Dave Brown was.
Yeah, the Killers played a few shows there for sure. It was always fun. Dave Brown managing, and Mac was the owner. That was when East Nashville. I'm not going to hate on the East Nashville now, like many people do. It has changed. But I will say that back in those days when I first moved into East Nashville, and at that time I didn't even when I moved here, I felt like the East Nashville scene was already happening, and I was coming on the tail end of it. Little did I know that it would go through even more change after I moved there in like 2004. But that's around 2004, 2005. I remember walking out of my house and within walking distance going to see live music, 4 to 5 venues. And it was usually friends of mine playing a band. And being from Auburn, Alabama, that was something I had never really experienced. Auburn didn't really have rock clubs. We had house parties and a few restaurants or clubs that we could set up on the floor and play on occasionally. But it wasn't something where every week and every weekend just walk out your door and see great bands playing, and usually your friends. But that was the most wonderful thing in the world. It's not necessarily like that anymore here. Still playing great live music and bands. At that time, it was, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it other than just walk down the street, pay a couple dollars, go in, have beers, watch your bands play, go to the next place. Now it's very much more industry, I guess, in some respects. Yeah, I think that's what I'll say. But still great venues in town. I like going to the 5 Spot, the Basement East. Dave is over at Basement East. They're finally having shows again after the tornado took them out. I think that picture of Basement East with the Tennessee flag on it has become an iconic image around here. Seen it in Nashville a lot and in national news. But I'm excited that it's moved past the iconic image to being a whole building again.
It's just one wall, basically. Yeah. If everybody listening there's the Basement East got flattened by the tornadoes last year, and there's one wall standing up, and it's got that, I believe, in Nashville wall, which is pretty amazing that actually survived it, because the place got obliterated.
Had a year. I know everybody's had a year. You guys have had really tough things happening down in Texas.
Yeah,
I think we all need I hope we all get a little break of just a little bit of normality for a while. But between the tornadoes, the pandemic, the guy blowing up his RV in downtown Nashville on Christmas Day.
That's right.
The floods, a host of crazy right-wingers moving to town. It's been a hell of a dynamic here for a while.
Yeah, it has. I remember when the tornado hit, and then it's been 2 weeks ago, the flood, and there's some flooding and everything, and then I was just waiting for locusts to show up out the next week. And you kind of feel like that after a while. I know Dave Brown went straight from like tornado to COVID. He was the first people I knew had COVID, and he got through that luckily. But man, that was a rough year for a lot of people.
But it makes it even. I always like to try to draw some sort of silver lining. That's how I get up in the morning and go to bed happy. I know everyone I am talking to being vaccinated is excited about seeing people. And yeah, if I see you again, get ready. I'm going to hug you.
Oh yeah, man, it's gonna be great. I want to get you guys down here now too. I want to see the show, and I like that record a lot.
We're gonna play shows. I look at. I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel the same as me. I look at myself 2 years ago, and I'm still, like I said, I'm really excited about Kings of the Fucking Sea. But live music and friends and basically being social in general, I had taken that for granted. I was definitely settled into my middle-aged years, my vintage years, and to get me to go to a show was getting harder and harder and harder. And to get me to just leave the house was getting harder. Well, I've been in the house now for a long time. I am ready to go see people and participate again in the scene, see live music, live poetry, go out there and create stuff again. My own band playing, traveling, getting out there, doing some more poems. Time to live life again.
It's a good thing. I'm there with you on that, because it's I really want to go see a show. I'd go see anybody right now. I'd go see a shitty band just to get out.
the last show, I've seen this going around the internet. I think this is one of those popular Facebook things that was going around during the pandemic. The last show I saw before the pandemic was Blue Oyster Cult, and my wife, Poni, and I, which I can't remember if during this whole conversation, Poni plays drums for Kings of the Fucking Seas, and I'm her husband, so we do a lot together, including going to rock shows and surviving a pandemic.
Oh yeah, Poni was in the Ettes also too, by the way. Drums for the Ettes.
Yeah,
and she's also a noted fashion designer too. She still has her Silver line. Is that right? Is it Silver?
Yeah, she's a fashion designer, and her line is called Black by Maria Silver.
That's right.
And she does very well. She's won a bunch of awards. It makes these incredibly unique and very classy outfit designs and dresses and pants and T-shirts and bags, and she's the busiest person I know. Our main house, and then we have a back house where the band practices, and she has her design studio. She's during the pandemic, she's been working out there 9 to 5, like she has pre-pandemic and like she will be after pandemic, and many times 9 to 9 the next day. But the last show that we went and saw was Blue Oyster Cult in Atlanta, and that was February of 2020. She bought the ticket. It was a birthday or late Christmas gift, something like that for me, and we went down there, and everybody was talking about. I think at that time everybody was calling it coronavirus. Remember, for a while people were calling it coronavirus instead of COVID.
That's right. Yeah,
the coronavirus. What's going to happen? But it wasn't on the tip of everybody's tongue. It was a few weeks after that it really started. We went and saw Blue Oyster Cult, and it was amazing. And had no idea that was going to be the last live show I was going to see for a while. And then when the shit did go down, with COVID started happening, and started thinking that Blue Oyster Cult, the Blue Oyster Cult song, Godzilla, nature then again proves the folly of man.
Man, that band though is kind of they played here at the Empire Control Room in Austin, and I think the show sold out. I mean, I think they've been real lucky with like the meme generation and all the like the cowbell thing. Little bites of it can be used on TikTok, and I think they've done real well streaming wise. Especially for a classic rock band.
Their new album is really great too. I mean, the hardest thing being Blue Oyster Cult or Black Sabbath or a band like that is when you put out some of the greatest albums of all time, your own worst enemy when it comes to comparisons to yourself. So their new album is amazing. It's not a Secret Treaties or Agents for Fortune or whatever, but it's fantastic. And I feel like there's been a bit of a resurgence in interest in bands like that in general recently. Seeing more people talking about Blue Oyster Cult, and I guess Sabbath has always had their own thing going at the same time.
They're classic, yeah.
Sabbath never goes away. Thank goodness. But it seems like people are kind of interested in Grand Funk Railroad, and I fucking love all that stuff. So I'm glad that it's kind of coming back in a sense. As we're all old enough to know now that there is cycles to things. So
oh yeah.
Before I'm gone, I hope the stuff I really love does come back in the vogue again. And I would love to see a new generation of bands doing things and that see what they do with it. I've really been trying to find groups that are into that stuff now, and starting to pop up a little bit more here and there. I don't know how many people listen to the podcast, but I'm gonna say I'm tired of computers and music, man. Tired of it. It was really cool for a while, the sounds that people were getting with production, and I'm not talking about just for rock scene, I'm talking about everything. Really some neat next wave stuff going on, and things going on with hip hop, and these incredible sounds that you never heard before. But now I feel like I'm treading into dangerous territory here, giving some of my opinions. But I feel like now that new sounds aren't really that astounding because you take it anymore. It's just not having the same effect. You highlight something with the mouse now and process it. It's sound like anything you want. It's almost expected. So I'm ready for something else. This is it. I'm going on record. I'm tired of the internet, tired of the computers. Let's go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
What's after the internet? No one really talks. It's always about internet is the future. It's not the future anymore. It's here. What's next?
I think it's a great place to find influences. I mean, I know my son's playing in a band, and you can spot the influences just with the hearing them practice. You hear that they assimilate a lot of information, and what's kind of cool is I do get some cool musical influences kind of seep in there, which is really nice.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm not anti any of that music or anti-internet. I don't want to come off as a Luddite. I've gotten turned on to all kinds of groups from eras that I'm into via YouTube. I have YouTube on rotation fairly often. My title algorithm is firmly tuned into how my brain works now.
Same here.
And it's turning me onto things pretty regularly. But I guess what I'm saying is that all that now is a part. It's a part of our culture now. It's mainstream now. It is part of life, and don't necessarily want it to go away. Wait to see what's going to come next.
Well, I think also having people like you and people who know you have a good broad sense of music and can turn people on to cool things. I think it's good to have the Chets of the world kind of like turning people on to cool stuff.
Yeah, I do love that. I do love that stuff, and it's that is certainly something where the internet has opened new doors for me. No way would I have found out about it. It's interesting to me that when the Killers were kicking around, one of the more popular series of records, LP anthologies, the Back to the Grave series, of course. And you know it, I know it, everybody from back in the 90s rock, whatever you want to call it, early 2000s rock knows about the Back to the Grave series. And what was neat about that series is that it turned people on to these bands that were doing amazing things that never made it big enough to be known on the radio or last on the radio. So you found all these amazing gems. And I think the same thing happened in punk rock, too. A lot of compilations that chartered that territory. But I don't... I'm starting to stammer now, so I don't know what I'm trying to get to. I think it was just in the last few years that I've been mining these gold mines or these gold veins of sources of information about all of the hard rock bands from the 70s that were playing and making amazing music that didn't make it, and it had these amazing records out that they kind of ended up in the thrift store bins or whatever. Easy Riding, that label was great about spreading the word on some of those bands. But I've definitely gone in a rabbit hole exploring that era of music via the internet. A lot of amazing. And what is also interesting to me about that is that a lot of these bands, they actually were on labels and were put into nice studios. It wasn't garage rock in the literal sense of the word. Labels had so much money that time if they were able to put some in the studio, tell them that they were going to be huge, and then they were dropped and forgotten. And it's pretty amazing to find those old records and appreciate them again.
Oh yeah, and there's also the little small labels. I'm fascinated by like Numero's compilations of the different labels. They'll do an anthology of a label, which is great just to hear the music and also to realize that there's a vibrant music scene in every little small town or every big city. It was it's interesting.
It's a cool parallel with the writer's side of me too. Is that it's very similar in the writing culture to history is you find these books that were published in scenes of poetry and writing that happened different places, and I many times think of myself as a miner. I come across these gold veins and things that were happening in poetry in a certain town, certain place, and you start following the trees, who knew each other and related to one another. You know, you follow that history, and it's fun doing it, and you find some really beautiful things that not only do I enjoy as a fan, but also I can use in my own music and writing. It's a great way. It's a great way to pass the hours too.
Oh yeah, you're very generous with your knowledge and your resources too. I mean, you've offered a lot of people a lot of chances to be on this compilation of poetry. It's really difficult anyway. There's not a lot of anthologies being published right now, and you've been able to offer people that, which is wonderful. And
thanks, man.
Yeah, are you involved with the Maggot Brain magazine, or is that a different wing of the?
I am not directly involved with the Maggot Brain magazine. I'm glad you brought it up, though. I think it's pretty awesome that it's being done. Like, who would think of putting out a tactile magazine that you actually flip through? It's not an internet magazine in this day and age.
Oh yeah.
It is. When I say I'm not involved in it, that's not necessarily true. It's the whole truth. It's a Third Man Records, Third Man Books publication, but it's mainly edited and comes out of Third Man's group in Detroit. So the main editor is a fellow named Mike McGonigal, and he's been doing amazing press stuff for years. He did the magazine Yeti.
Okay.
Don't know if you. He's done a lot of things. If you Google him, he's done a lot of cool shit. But he and Ro Peter Hans out of Third Man's Detroit store, Cass Corridor, they do a lot with it. Vince Flank's involved in it. Dave Buick, who used to be in the Go, is involved in it. It's most of McGonigal's baby. Magazines that's a different game. I've got my hands full with publishing books, getting material together for publishing multiple issues magazines per year. That's a task and a undertaking all into itself, man.
That's a lot to do. Yeah, I'm glad to see the magazine. It reminds me of the Grand Royal magazine the Beastie Boys put out. I haven't read the issue of Maggot Brain yet, but I'm kind of like, it seems like it would be their kind of Grand Royal-ish kind of thing, which is
I think you can definitely draw a line, connect the dots between that. We were all of us that are either directly involved with Maggot Brain or tangentially, like I am. We're all into that magazine back in the day, and certainly was inspiration for this.
Yeah, Third Man does some cool stuff. I wish sometimes I see some things coming out. I'm like, man, I wish I'd thought of that. I wish I'd done that, that project. Or some of the things like, wow, that's just fantastic. And some of the things he's come up with, like the record within a record, and then just the crazy stuff he's dreamed up has been really pretty, a lot of fun.
My favorite thing, and I didn't have anything to do with this one other than just watching it and thinking, God, this is fucking cool, is when they sent the record up into space.
Yeah, I remember
I don't
that.
know if you saw. Yeah, you can. If anyone makes it this far, listening to me stammering on this podcast, I would highly recommend looking up first record played in space, Googling it, and it took a Carl Sagan record that Third Man recorded and released, put it on a record player, rigged it up with weather balloons, and flew it up into the lower atmosphere of space. So it did go into space. Put GoPro cameras in there and speakers and recorded the record playing. You could actually see it playing as it crests the horizon of Earth and goes into space. And then it comes back down, and you can see it descending, and the record's still playing it, and, crash landing down on Earth. I'm simplifying the engineering behind this. I have a little bit of a behind the curtain look at this, of course, since I worked there. The engineering behind this whole feat was incredible. I mean, there's some real math going on here. You don't just put something on a couple of balloons and send it into space. It's a hell of a task.
Oh yeah,
the fact that they did it, I don't know, keeps life fun.
All the stuff that goes on at the Third Man. I know they got the new plant up in Detroit, and then you get the big store down there too in Nashville, and it's always that is kind of gentrified around Third Man a bit, hasn't it? Since I was there last, I think.
Yes, nowhere in Nashville is escaping gentrification. It's a double-edged sword. I've lived places where city was going the other direction, and it's very depressing seeing a city become depressed and basically fall apart. And then you have Nashville that just continues to grow and grow and grow. And with that, you have the advantages of economy and jobs. And when I first moved here, we were all like, well, wouldn't it be great if there's a ramen place? And now, a few years later, there's 20 ramen places. I'm overgeneralizing again.
Yeah.
So all of Nashville is being affected. You take the good with the bad, but I will say that the sharper edge of this double-edged sword that's cutting deeper seems to be the bad stuff. That seems to be happening a little bit more now. We're losing music venues. I think we're losing some of the culture that makes Nashville special. Those things are under duress. They are being threatened. And I'm not a native Nashvilleian. I've lived here for a little while, but I still sometimes I have a hard time thinking of myself as a Nashvilleian. I've been, I've lived other places a long time too. So if you talk to people who have lived here for a long time or their entire lives and hear their take on what's happening in Nashville, they don't have the best story to tell. Most of them really feel like they're losing something here. But once again, like I said earlier in our conversation, I like to try and keep silver linings. It is great that things like Third Man exists in Nashville and the Beltport Theater and Soft Junk and Duke's Bar and Bobo's Korean Grill, and there's a great gallery called the Elephant Gallery. Those of us that can't afford to live in Nashville now, we have Madison.
Yeah, it's like that in Austin too. I mean, a lot of people are starting to move out of the city, and property taxes are horrendous here. And
there's some great grassroots organizations that are doing some really wonderful things. There's a group out of North Nashville called Gideon's Army that, talk about walking the talk. That group is doing things that, I don't know. I'm a little cynical when I say this, but the kinds of music that we've all been in, there's always talk of revolution and changing the world. And we do it, we accomplish it a little bit here and there, the way we do. We have these countercultural scenes that are really important. Saved my life. I would have grown up a terrible square asshole if it wasn't for rock and roll. The countercultures that I was involved with. But in Gideon's Army, they actually find problems in their neighborhood and they fucking solve those problems. I mean, they're like boots on the ground. We're going to change shit right now. Heavy dudes. I mean, it is awesome. You should look them up sometime. Amazing organization.
Totally. Yeah, I totally do that.
And it's people like them that when people get down on Nashville, it's like, hey, there's plenty of things to get down on Nashville, but don't forget the Gideon's Army, and people like that are here too. Those people are Nashvillians also. They're light years ahead of all of us in this and doing amazing things.
Yeah, it did. And I mean, Nashville, I can't, I always have to say wonderful things about that place because I've always enjoyed going there. And, I lived there. The thing that really helped me out a lot too is I felt appreciated. I felt like people were taking seriously the projects I was working on. And the fact that I actually got some to fruition, I think helped out. People like to see that you're actually creating things. And, it was great to help people.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Very, very true. I started a poetry reading series here that landed me into a job editing books. I don't. That wasn't going to fucking happen in Auburn, Alabama.
Oh no, not at all. But but the fact that you're undeniable as far as like what you've got, you know a lot about a lot of things. I was confident you'd be doing something along these lines. It's great that you're landed in a good spot where your talent's appreciated and also you're able to have the budget to put out some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and I named my band after Auburn, Lee County, Immortal Lee County Killers. There's really a special group of people. I mean, that scene had when we were around in that scene, there was probably less than 100 people who played original music that had anything to do with rock or punk rock or avant-garde or anything that was forward thinking. And it, at that time had Quadrojets and Immortal Lee County Killers, Man or Astro Man, the Matador, Bone Dolly, Michael Shandorf, effervescent from there, started out there. It's amazing. It's amazing how many bands came out of that tiny little town and that extremely tiny scene at that moment in life.
Was Dan Sartain was from Alabama, wasn't he? He wasn't from Auburn though, was he?
No. He's I didn't know Dan very well. Just crossed paths with him, music wise, shows and stuff. I don't know where he grew up or where he's from, but I know him Birmingham. That's where he was playing most of the time, I think, based out of. But he played house parties in Auburn. At that time, if you were playing music in Alabama, he played house parties in Auburn, came through there. And there's only, I think places bands like that, original bands could play is less than 10. You could probably count them on one hand.
Yeah.
Venues and house parties.
Yeah. Where were the Wednesdays from? Are they from Auburn or are they from like just Alabama?
Well, Jamie Barrier, he was in the Quadrojets for our last record. And he lived in Auburn. So I guess you could say the Wednesdays were from Auburn, but his brothers that were in the Wednesdays, they were from North Alabama, Florence. So I guess you could say the Wednesdays were from, I bet you Jamie would say they were from Florence. But he lived in Auburn for a long time, and they were certainly part of that scene.
I remember Garage Shock 2000 I saw. It was the Wednesdays, you guys, and the Soledad Brothers, I think, and then the Monkey Ranch were headlining. That was the show. That was a
good show.
That was a great show. Yeah, I met Swank through you, I think, and Doug.
Yeah, Jamie's brother died so long ago. I think his name is Jody. He was doing this thing where wherever the Wednesdays would play during his set, he would somehow, I don't know how the guy did it, but he would always somehow climb up into the rafters and hang upside down through the ceiling from something everywhere I saw him play.
They did that emos too. Is both the brothers, both Jamie and his brother were hanging upside down at one point, and they were jumping around and stuff. I think that's when JR got his head busted open the night before that. I missed that night.
Yeah, that's right. Now that was, there was a time when the Quadrigets did one tour without me, and that was part of that tour, that garage shot. So I didn't play with the Quadrigets that particular garage shot. The Killers played, and I think we played on the same night. I can't remember, but I remember seeing that. The guys were doing this, a couple of them really in special wrestling, and they were doing this gag every night where bass player Pud would grab a folding chair and hit JR in the forehead. And they knew how to do it wrestling style, so that JR could take the hit and not be hurt. But at this particular garage shot, something went awry, and Pud caught JR in the forehead for real and knocked the shit out of him and cut him wide open. And he just bled everywhere. Foreheads, if you watch boxing or anything, foreheads, any kind of cut there's a lot of bleeding.
Oh, yeah.
It was gnarly.
I saw a photo of it.
Was that the Garage Shock that Tim Kerr broke his leg too?
I think so. It was the Garage Shock 2000, and it was the night before you guys played, because I saw Doug, and Doug was like, "Were you here last night?" And I was like, "No, I little kids back then, so I couldn't get away for one night, and so I wanted to see you guys." And he's like, "Yeah, JR from the Quadrigets busted his head wide open and had stitches."
There's a great picture of that.
Like Gigi Allen picture almost. It was so gory. It was bad.
Yeah, those guys the Quadrigets still get together and play on occasion. They rock on. They fly on.
Are Dexatine still around, or is it basically just Lee Baines' thing now? Or
I've kind of lost track of the Dexatines. Craig Sweet Dog Craig's not in the band anymore, and that's who I talk to a lot. That was in the band. Matt Patton plays in the Drive-By Truckers. That's his main thing now. He used to be in the Dexatines. He was another person that I was in touch with. So I think they play occasionally, but Elliot's the lead singer. He's got a family. He works for the University of Alabama, so I think he plays when he can.
Nothing wrong with that. The Lee Baines III is still playing. He was supposed to play my party, I think, last year at 2020.
3 has been hitting that hard for years. They put the record out on Sub Pop, and then they had a new record come out on. It can't be new now. I think it was on Giovanni, maybe? Giovanni? I'm not sure, but those guys have been in high gear from day one. I felt like I toured a lot back in the day, but LB3s, they put many more miles on the odometer than any of us.
Yeah. What's next on the agenda for Third Man Books? You got some more more collections of poetry and fiction coming out, or is it just are you basically doing poetry, or is it more like whatever kind of? I know you've done some photography books as well.
We do everything. That's most presses will have a specialty, like record labels, especially indie smaller presses. And we're a small press. But we do everything, and it definitely keeps the job interesting. One example that I like to always share with folks is that we did a biography on Iggy Pop, Stooges, called Total Chaos. So working with Iggy Pop and author Jeff Gold, and did a couple of events with Iggy reading. And he's a hero of mine, hero of just about everybody. Really incredible person to hang out with. We did this book that was all about the Stooges, man. One of the most notorious bands that's ever walked the face of the earth, and one of the most important bands. Finished that book, and the next book I did was a children's book based on Jack's song, the White Stripes song, "We're Gonna Be Friends." So as an editor, my whole mindset had to change from doing this book about the world's most notorious band to doing a book for kids, and it was quite a 180 to do conceptually. I went from talking to members of the Stooges and people who were around them and part of their scene, and the author Jeff Gold, who put this all together, talking about those days, and as we all know, a lot of those days weren't so happy. A lot of those days were dark days, for those guys, that band. And going from that mindset to trying to figure out how to do a children's book and what do children like in a book. Someone brought their kids Thursday, and I would grab artwork that we were talking about and ask the kids, like, "Hey, what do you think of it?" Trying to see if these children would respond to the artwork. It was that was quite a flip flop. So we have coming up. We have a coloring book coming out. There's different bands that you can color, and you can design your own record label, write it in there and color it. We say it's a coloring book for kids and adults of all ages. Then we have a book of poems called "Standing on the Verge of Getting It On" and "Maggot Brain." That's the whole title. And the poem is written by Adrian Matika, who I think I mentioned earlier. Extremely good poet, good person. He's a poet that has natural rhythm to his words. And I'm talking about poetry rhythm, not hip-hop rhythm. Two beautiful things, but different. Adrian just has this amazing rhythm in his words. He's influenced by hip-hop and rock and blues and jazz. You see it and hear it in his words. And he's written this book about the two Funkadelic albums, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On and Maggot Brain. He's responded to those albums, and he's basically going down the track list of each album and writing a poem about that track and about himself. And it's also collaborating with a couple of artists. Nicholas Gallinen, who just had a record come out on Sub Pop of Yassine, Yatseen. I should probably find out about my pronunciation regarding that band. But Kevin Neirter, Neirter, is the other artist. It's going to be a very different kind of I don't know if you're into science fiction, but if you are, you've probably seen those old dime science fiction books where there's two front covers. You flip them over. It's a 2-in-1 book.
Yeah.
That's how we're designing this poetry book. So it's really two small books in one. Standing on the Verge book and the Maggot Brain book. You flip it over, it's going to be a 2-in-1.
When's that coming out?
That's going to come out in June. And then later in the year, a book that I'm pretty excited about called Bunnymen. It's the autobiography of Will Sargent, the guitar player for Echo and the Bunnymen. Fantastic story about how that band got started. And also, we all love that art to read about a band that starts up and no one knows who they are, and we love reading about the hardships that they endure, the hurdles that they jump over, and that success that they gain. And then, Echo and the Bunnymen has become extremely influential, especially in the post-punk scene. But what I really like about the book is Will talking about when he was a kid and post-World War II Britain. Let me tell you, things were fucked up, man. I mean, I understand now. Yeah, I understand now why so many different kinds of music came out. Kids that were growing up in that era, from Sabbath and Birmingham to post-punk, Echo and the Bunnymen, The Cure, to punk rock of the Damned, Sex Pistols. Those people were growing up in tough times. A country that was literally bombed almost out of existence, and then dealing with an entire populace of people who had been at war or suffered at war. And all of these people turned to music growing up to try to save themselves through that, or guide themselves through those kind of consequences, psychic and physical consequences of war. And Will's book is, I actually think it's more about that than it is Echo and the Bunnymen. So it's very much a history lesson, as much as it is a history of a band, and you also window into this person's soul.
And just take my money. Take my money now. It sounds awesome. I love the band, and I know they had some.
I need tape of that too. I need a tape of that too, because I think I just laid down a pretty good explanation for that book.
Oh yeah, I'll get you. Yeah, definitely get you a copy of that. It's a good one to put in there. I'm glad I could be of help with that. Yeah, I remember they lost their drummer. Was it Pete DeFreitas? He died in a motorcycle wreck in New Orleans, of all places.
Yeah,
and
that band's been. If you've been in a band for. Will has been in Echo and the Bunnymen in one way or another for 30 years. I think about the bands that I've been in, Water Jets and Immortal Lee County Killers are the ones that are the bands that put out records and played around and a few people know about. But then there was bands I was in college, Engine House and Intersect Siren, and bands I was in high school. And just thinking about the interpersonal relationships that happen in the short lives of those bands, and the stories that tell about Water Jets or Lee County Killers during this podcast or whatever, how being in a band for 3 or 4 years, it's almost like life accelerated. There's just so much that happens. There's so many interpersonal relationships and so many things that happen to you and you do to other people, whether it was intentional or not. And the explosion of that energy that happens in the lifespan of a band, 2 or 3, 4 years, is incredible. Then you take that times 10, something like Echo and the Bunnymen, 30 years. I mean, this book probably just scratches the surface of everything that guy has gone through being in that band.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's them being in vogue and then them kind of going, kind of being not so in vogue. And then it came back around and suddenly they're an influence now. One of their last records they did was that album. It's the one with Holy Moses on it, which is a great song. And I thought that was one of their better songs they done, in their careers. Their last record's pretty great.
Yeah, I just listened to that record the other day. And Will's he's been in a lot of stuff that I got to admit that I wasn't aware of. He's, if you go to, for instance, you go to his Instagram, he's doing incredible visual art. Also, he basically designed the cover of the book. He's done production for a lot of other folks, produced art shows and art bands. I really like working with him. Anytime that we have a Zoom call or whatever, I usually end up laughing through most of it. He's a funny person.
Meeting people like that you never thought you'd meet. Yeah, that's been that they're easy, they're good to work with. It's really cool. Yeah, it's nice.
Well, it's rewarding when you feel like you put your faith into someone and it turns out that you're right. Many times put my faith in a band or music, and I love the music, and it influences my life and sends me in a certain direction, and then find out that the people who make it actually suck. And that's disappointing. Doesn't turn me off from the music, but just as disappointing as that is, it's rewarding when you do put your faith into a group or an artist, and it pays off when you find out that person is just as cool as you thought they would be, if not more.
It is pretty great. You got the record out now, and then you're still writing. Anything else going on? Any more second follow-up album, or just kind of going to let this run for a bit and put some more stuff out?
Yeah, for me personally, I've got this book coming out, the third band I told you about. Each one of those is adventure into itself, journey. Kings of the Fucking Sea are looking forward to playing shows again. We have folks that want to put out records, and we need to do that European tour that COVID canceled for us. Definitely want to do that. That's one thing that that really affected me when Killers broke up. Like, I thought it broke up is kind of a harsh term for what happened to Killers. It was just time to stop. So we did. But one thing that I thought at the time was one of the great joys of my life playing music overseas, just being able to go and do something like that in a different part of the world that engaged with different kinds of people and culture. It was just something that I felt very blessed to be able to do. And I kind of thought, well, I don't know if I'll be able to do that again. When offers started coming in for the Kings to go overseas, I thought, I can't believe that I get a second chance at this, especially in my vintage years. And then pandemic kind of took that away, or did take that away from everybody. And by the way, we're not a professional band. I certainly give up my place on stage and tour to people who are doing this 24/7 professionally. I feel much more for them than their lost touring than what happened to us. Still, with that said, I do want to go play Europe again, and we have some offers to do that. So that's certainly coming up. I think Doug Lehman is going to do some recording band. He's definitely going to do, we're calling it quote unquote a TV special. We got a pretty cool idea cooked up to do a concert in the attic of our back house and put it online. Not necessarily a streaming show like has kept many of us alive, thriving, surviving during this pandemic. I've watched quite a few live stream concerts. A little different from that. I think it harkens more toward TV specials of yesteryear, like Kiss Meets the Phantom, that kind of thing. But done 2021, end of the pandemic style. I hope it's end of the pandemic, man. That's what I'm hoping and trying to put out there in the world, some positivity. So got that coming up. Got the science fiction story that I've been working on for a couple of years. Gonna finish that and then go to work next week.
I'll tell you what I'm really excited for is to see what your wife and you're going to wear for Halloween this year. You have the best Halloween costumes. I've got to give you, got to just stand up and applaud for that because
well, then I need to get all credit goes to Poni for that. Being that she is a designer, fashion designer, Halloween is something she gets into, and she's very good at it.
Yeah, and Chet's Facebook page is like you were Kirk in Uhura one year, and then you're Mad Max Thunderdome one year too, which is
that's right. Yeah,
I was like, son of a bitch, that's great. Yeah.
We had plans for this Halloween too, but of course that didn't happen. So we'll make up for it next Halloween.
I think maybe Paul Rudd may have you. He's like, I don't know if he beat you, but he's kind of at your neck and neck because he did a bunch of stuff on Letterman one year, all his Halloween costumes. He went as John Stossel one year. I think that's the most randomly awesome Halloween costume.
Well, if I tell Poni that, she'll up her game. God knows what will be this Halloween.
Please do. It's a lot of fun watching that because they're just like they're so well done, and yeah, it's great. I'm glad to I'm delighted to hear you're playing and gonna be touring. So I'll be there full force in Austin.
Yeah, thanks for having me and talking to me and listening to me for so long. And
always a delight, man. I mean, we could probably talk for another 2 hours, but we'll do a part 2 sometime down the road. I've been doing these episodes where the first one ended up being 2 hours long, and the second one was 2.5 hours long. So I'm like, not going to do a Joe Rogan length episode, so I'll keep it. We'll keep them wanting more, and we'll have you back in a bit to talk about what's going on. 6 months or so.
I feel like I would love to do that. I feel like part 2, we did talk a lot about. Talk to the president, but also talk a lot of things about days of yesteryear. Maybe part 2, we talk about tomorrow and things gonna happen in the future. To get Sarah and Poni involved, they've got a lot to share also.
I'd love that. That'd be great because I'll try to get do like a little pop-up tour of Chicken Ranch stuff one day, and then I'll bring my rig out to Nashville and we can just hang out and shoot the shit in the backyard or something.
I think that would be great, and I'll probably keep my mouth shut for that one. Let Poni and Sarah take over because they've got a lot to say. They've done a lot. They've done shitloads, and being, a whole other topic. Being women in rock, especially at the time when they were playing, hearing some of the stories, fucked up shit, man.
Oh yeah, I've heard a couple through the grapevine. Just it's I can imagine how just weird that is.
Yeah, I don't want to. We'll let Poni and Sarah talk and tell their stories if they want to, approach it how they want. But those two are heroes, and there's a reason why I love being in this band is that that rhythm section is the Kings of the Fucking Sea rhythm section is just unbeatable. I've tried trios before, and this is the first time that bass, drums, and guitar has really worked for me, and it has everything to do with those two. They were in the Ettes and the Love Killers, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amazing bands.
Yeah, both are really great. And then, it's good to, when you're happy in a band, you enjoy the people you play with, it really reflects in the music. And it's, I'm happy that you're, creating music. You're a prolific guy. You're always creating, music and art and literature. So it's, it's an impressive body of work you've got.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, man, thank you so much. It's been fun. I'm glad I was a little worried about the vaccine thing kind of knocking me out, but I'm feeling okay so far. I think I'm getting 5G in my arm, but I'm good, But,
2-hour conversation and interview after your second vax. That's a job well done, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And man, I can't wait to see you guys in Nashville. And I'm glad this is giving me an excuse to kind of get in touch and hang out and talk because I really enjoy when I bump into you in Nashville. It was like for just a few minutes at a time, but it's always good to see you, and it's really great to talk to you. And I hope we can keep chatting on the phone occasionally.
Yeah, please do. Stay in touch, my friend.
Thank you so much, buddy. And I will we'll talk to you very soon.
All right. Take it easy.